This is the Stock Trading Reality Podcast, episode 147.
Something that I've kind of regretted as I've gotten a little bit older is that I realized I haven't taken a lot of risks in my life. My money's just been kind of sitting around doing nothing.
This is the Stock Trading Reality Podcast, where you get to see the realistic side of a trader's journey. Get inspired and stay motivated by everyday normal people who are currently on their journey to trading success. And this is your host. He needs to work on his flexibility, Clay Trader.
Yeah, you know, I've made a lot of progress in my health. I've made a lot of progress in my weight and my body composition. But one thing that I'm slacking on, and I know I'm slacking on it, and I still continually am not doing anything about it, is stretching and getting my flexibility to probably where it should be. In fact, I want to try to get some yoga. Some people in my friend group, IT Nate's wife's included, they go to like a yoga class, and I want to go and do that, but I think it might be Tuesday nights, which is when our Clay Trading University live webinars are. So there was some conflict, but I don't remember quite what that was. But yeah, moral of the story, I need to get more flexible. The last thing I need to do is just bend over to pick up one of my kids or be playing with my kids, and because my flexibility is shot, I do something stupid in my muscles or my joints or anything like that. So that's a goal that I want to start to work on. And now that I'm getting this out in the public sphere here, if you all want to keep me accountable, that would be great. But I got to start stretching. Ches, by the way, Ches is our esteemed co-host. Ches, how's your flexibility?
Definitely not enough. I have buddies who swear by yoga, and actually, similar to you, we actually, at the brewery I go to every week, they do yoga at 11 a.m., and then you get a free pint afterwards. But the reason why my buddy's so into it is because we're big into kind of skiing and snowboarding and mountain biking and things like that, and he goes, I don't care if there's this non-macho stigma to yoga and things. He goes, it's great for your body, and it's just like you said, kind of really prevents these injuries, because yeah, I mean, I've hurt myself doing the most silly, basic things, and I was like, wow, I'm not flexible at all. I need to work on this. So whether I think yoga is girly or not shouldn't really matter. If it's effective, it's effective. So that's just the case. And like I said, he absolutely swears by it and has been doing it for a couple of years now.
Nice. Are you going to buy me some yoga pants?
Yeah, some Lululemon. I think it's time to invest because Clay's going all in.
Would you ever want to see me in yoga pants, those skin-tight ones, or would that probably haunt your dreams for a very long time?
I mean, you should be asking Ask StockTwits if they want to see future videos of, you know, all your stock trading tip videos, you and Lululemons.
That'll make that much more sense as we get into the interview. So well played there, Ches. Well played. But yeah, on the topic of the interview, today we were talking with Aarron. He is a member of the community, doesn't spend a whole lot of time. He spends time in the community, but he's not active in the chat room in terms of talking and stuff. But yeah, he is a member, and he is somebody that's still relatively new. And as we get involved, he has had some bumps and bruises, still has some things that he needs to work on. But there's quite a bit to learn and discover here. And it's something that I think everybody can take either one thing or another thing from. So without further ado, let's hear from Aarron. Aarron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clay. How you doing, man?
Very, very good. And first off, thank you for taking some time. I guess I'm assuming your evening. Where are you located at geographically?
I'm in Buffalo, New York, so we're having a lot of fun fishtailing around the streets.
You get some snow there, so you're Eastern time.
I'm jealous.
Oh, don't be, man. You know, it amazes me. I've lived here all my life, and we still get people who are like 40 years old in an SUV the size of a house, and they still forget how to drive. So you don't want to be here, believe me. Not in that, no.
It does always seem to be that first snowfall, even here in Michigan. Everybody almost has to reacquaint themselves with, all right, how do you do this again? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it can be annoying. But I guess the point I was trying to get across, you never know, snow, good topic, but it is about 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for you.
Yep.
So I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to talk with Ches and I. So this is the dedication for you listeners out there that we have members of the community. And also, I want to give props to Aarron. I sent out an email to the group saying, hey, if anybody is willing to come be a guest, Aarron replied and has volunteered to be here, which we always say, Ches and I really do appreciate that. So Aarron, on that note, thank you very much for making our life easier and not having to hunt you down and pull your teeth out and get you to come on here. So
no problem.
We always appreciate that. So let's start at the beginning of all this for you. Where did you hear about the markets at? What was, I guess, kind of what needed to happen? What occurred that not only, you know, made you aware of the markets, but ultimately let you want to make that decision to get more involved, more hands-on with it?
Sure. So, you know, trading in the market or, you know, investing in the market, you know, I know that there's different terms for different people and their kind of ideas and personalities and what they want. It's always something that's kind of interested me, but it's a very different kind of thinking for me. It's something that I had never had any experience with. You know, it's something that's just outside of the boundaries of what I usually think about or get involved with. And, you know, I was looking at, you know, my finances, and I work in digital marketing. I work in internet marketing in sales. So I do okay. You know, I'm a single guy. I got no kids. You know, I don't have a lot of debt outside of student loans 10 years later. So, you know, I'm doing okay for myself, but you can always do better. And one thing that's always been something that I've kind of regretted as I've gotten a little bit older is that I realized I haven't taken a lot of risks in my life. And I know, and Clay, I know this is something that you kind of talk about a lot, in that you shouldn't be looking at the market as a risk so much. But, you know, investing is a chance. You never know 100% what's going to happen. So I realized that my money's just been kind of sitting around doing nothing, gaining, you know, 6 cents of interest a month in a bank. So I said, well, you know, I know what I can afford to lose. You know, it's not going into a casino, so let's see what we can do. So that's kind of the, you know, the initial steps.
Well, that's great. Now, how long ago was that, though? Was this recently or over the past couple of years?
About the past year. Yeah, about the past year and a half, something like that.
Okay, well, that's great. Honestly, you know, welcome to the space. And I think a lot of people, I'm kind of in a very similar boat to you in the sense that I had recognized for a long time that to kind of go forward with a lot of things in life, you know, you don't just get things by always playing it as safe as possible. So, yeah, you got to kind of take risks, but you got to take logical risks as well. You know, obviously not put the house up to try to make it big or go home, because we've already heard those stories. And Clay, we've done a good couple of podcasts of people who go big and go home and generally do go home. So, all right, well, that's great to hear. It's been about a year now. So what was going to be your approach to kind of enter the market? Were you going to just do some research on YouTube, read some books off Amazon, and just throw your money into a managed mutual fund? How were you going to kind of start to increase your risk with exposure to the market?
So through my work, you know, I have a 401k set up. I invest in that weekly. You know, I'm 35, so I'm still reasonably young. So that is invested in, you know, a 2050, you know, managed, you know, kind of account. So it's fairly aggressive in the sense that there's a lot of time. So the whole idea that our financial advisor who comes in always talks about is, you know, don't be afraid when the market's down, because for you, with the time that you have, we actually want there to be dips, because then more shares are bought. So, you know, that's the long-term kind of thing. And then, you know, I alluded to my student loans, you know, things like that. I'm an independent person, but I work for someone else. So the ultimate goal is financial freedom, but also the freedom just to get up and not have to put any pants on every morning. And, you know,
Love it.
And why not, right? So if I'm able to be in control of that, always learning something, and then just be able to carve my own way, I think that's really what the American dream has to be more and more now. It's not just, well, making a great living and having a great car and doing this, that, and the other. It's about, you know, looking out for yourself and your family and the people that are important to you, and carving your own path that way instead of making somebody else the money.
Yeah, I can get fully behind that. And I think the most valuable commodity that we can all three agree on is time. And that's what you pretty much alluded to. Yeah, fancy cars are good for, I guess, marketing, and I guess if you want to just drive around in a fancy car, but a fancy car does nothing as far as time is concerned. So I am fully on board with your logic there in terms of, yeah, I mean, and I have nothing against people with a fancy car, but when people make it seem like that's what it's all about, I'd have to disagree. I think it's about the freedom of time and being able to do whatever you want with it. So you are at work, you're in these aggressive 401ks, and now is this something that, I know you mentioned about a year ago, so I mean, did something happen over the course of the year that, because our trading group, which you are now a part of, is not gear. I mean, we have people that are obviously in 401ks, but it's not like we're a 401k group that's sitting around saying, hey, what mutual fund is your 401k? And that's not really how the group functions. So what started to happen where you began to look for more of active trading, if you will? Because so far what you've described is just the long-term investing. So at what point did trading start to creep into this journey?
You know, like I said, it's kind of been something that's always kind of fascinated me or interested me, but I'd never taken the step. So a good friend of mine who was working with me at the time, he's had some, you know, investments, and he's a little younger than I am and, you know, more aggressive in certain ways, and it's paid off for him. So when the big Snapchat thing hit, you know, he bought some of that, and of course it went up and then went down and went up and went down. But we started talking about things like that. So we started talking about kind of modern ideas, modern technology, stuff like that. So Snapchat, we talked about stuff like GoPro, you know, things like that. And then it just kind of made sense. So that was actually my first investment, just a very nominal investment in GoPro, you know, when it was trading around the $7 mark. And, you know, I sat on it for a little while, and it went up, it went down, went up and went down. But that was kind of it. And then as I, you know, just saw the potential in that, and then more than anything, it just interested me. You know, it interested me to learn. It interested me to just kind of try to get a handle on that. And then, of course, circling back to trying to do something more for myself. So that's where it was. Like, my friend being involved kind of, you know, just pounced on it, you know, got me really into that mindset. And then, you know, with the advent of something like a Robinhood, where you're, you know, able to do it without the fees and all that kind of thing, it just seemed like the right time. So I said, let's do it and see what happens.
So correct me if I'm wrong, though, you were not using any kind of fundamental analysis in terms of looking into their portfolio or their balance sheet, stuff like that. You weren't doing anything like that, were you?
I would, you know, do some basic research. You know, you type the stock into a Google search. You know, you look, is it, you know, recommended by Zacks or whatever it is on a buy or sell, things like that. But like I said, this kind of thinking is definitely not something that I'm used to. So, you know, I've been kind of learning that as I go along in regards to, you know, what makes sense, what time is right to buy, you know, are we trying to hold it, what's the, what's the volume share, all that kind of stuff. So,
Sure. You're kind of looking at bigger picture where you kind of see things swinging into, and kind of just kind of trying to forecast where future growth might be. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Honestly, a lot of people kind of get involved in trading in generally two ways. One is they invest in something they're familiar with, whether it's their company, their industry, their sector, or two, they're trying to think of what's the next big thing, you know, what's the next internet that's going to come out, even though I'm not going to get into all that, but that's cool. So, okay, so obviously GoPro at a $7 ticket, you know, when it came out was great, because that thing went, you know, pretty close to 100 if I'm correct. But so did you have any criteria in terms of taking profits or taking losses at this time, or was this kind of you're gonna sit on it and let's see how things kind of shake out, because it's not this isn't obviously a day trade, of course.
So for me, you know, my thing is, you know, I want to go for the gusto, but I try to be rational about it. So for me, what my goal has been is to, you know, have this money that I'm willing to invest, you know, willing to, you know, play with is maybe the wrong word, but you guys know what I mean. And then the goal is to make that money and make it so that I'm not ultimately utilizing anything that I've had to work hard for to earn. You know, my first initial goal is to be able to trade with funds that I've earned through my research and being, you know, on top of stuff. And then past that, it's about, you know, what, and I've learned this the hard way a couple times already, is when there's a profit to be made, you got to take it. You know, you have to set, you know, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not working with hundreds of thousands of dollars or even tens of thousands of dollars. So for someone else where their profit on a swing trade, or, you know, just a couple days and saying, wow, that's a good value, you know, for them it could be in the thousands. For me, it could be in the hundreds. So that's the discipline that I have to be able to adhere to.
Okay, very nice. And you're kind of rubbing salt in my wound unintentionally, but my GoPro investment, actually, what was your reasoning to getting into GoPro? I know you said you talked with your buddy that got into Snapchat, and that's kind of the one thing that fascinates me about the market is, yeah, you can throw around ideas, you can come up with your own theories on things, and then you can quote unquote put your money where your mouth is. And I mean, if you truly believe in something, your idea, then it can play out. And I'm talking about more so from a fundamental perspective. So it is definitely fun to sit around and talk about that. But out of curiosity, why did you get into GoPro? Because I have a little GoPro story too. So let's compare notes. But so you're sitting with your buddy. So, what was your rationale?
First of all, one thing that I've learned that. And I know you've alluded to this, Clay, yourself, and also a lot of other people who are, obviously more seasoned, is that one of the things to kind of consider in regards to what you're going to trade or where you're going to trade is things that you either know or things that interest you, or, I don't know anything about biotechnology from, collegiate standpoint or a working standpoint, but if that's something I'm interested in, learn about it, research it, get to know it. So for me with GoPro, there were a couple things. So like I said, we were talking about things that are, modern technology, even though GoPro is kind of outdated in some ways now, but still modern technology, the ease of use. For me, a big thing for me is my film passion. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, an editor, a director. So for me, the technology makes sense in the sense of obviously, being cameras on the go. I'm all about the DIY thing, doing things on your own. So that gives you a great sense of freedom. So that was interesting to me because of the industry. And then my friend who had more experience was showing me, the trends of GoPro. So it's not just for a day or a week or a month. He goes, look at this chart for a year, look at this for 3 years, 5 years. And I don't remember all the specifics. But basically what he was showing is like the ebb and flow of the stock and how, it was up, then it went down, kind of dips and comes back up and down and up and down again. So he was looking at that and he said, I think we're in a really prime position to, be on an uptrend again. So those two things, combined with just saying, what the heck, let's take, let's get into this. That's what kind of prompted it for me.
Okay, cool. So I would say that you had much more validation than what I had. For me, it was, well, first off, like I said, I'm a little crusty over here because you mentioned you got in at $7. Well, me and the producer of the show, IT Nate, we got in at like $35 before it went all the way down to $7. And long story short, it was one of those where it's like you're looking at the chart like, and man, this thing was like $70, $80, $90 not that long ago. And it was in my retirement fund, so I'm thinking, but Clay, you have rules. You have rules of what the criteria is. But, my whole logic was, yeah, I mean, it's a GoPro, though. That thing, like, everybody loves GoPro. Yeah, that real scientific on my end. And for you listeners out there, we'll put it in the show notes, but I have a blog article that I wrote. But long story short, ended up taking a $1,500 loss on it. It should have been a lot more, but luckily, thanks to the power of options, I was doing some option strategies that helped lessen the load. But yeah, I probably should have waited until $7, and then I would have had a much better entry point. But it is what it is. Maybe you mentioned this, and I apologize if I missed it. But are you still in GoPro, or did you eventually sell out?
No, what happened was it went up to about $9 and some change, and that was probably where I should have exited. In the end, I ended up getting it, kind of on a panic sell, as a lot of people were. So it didn't. So no, I'm not in it anymore. I haven't been for a while. I still follow it though. It holds a place in my heart, being my first ever investment. So
hey, I remember my LVLT was my first ever. So I totally get that. Now you mentioned you sold because of a panic. What exactly was going on that ultimately caused you to sell?
So I got into it in the $7 range, $7.50, $7.70, something like that. That's when I got into it. And at one point it dipped down to slightly under $7, I believe, or right around $7. And I remember telling my friends at work, because this is what I was paying attention to instead of my job.
I know how that goes too. Yeah.
So, I said, man, maybe I should buy a little more, but I just held it because, again, it was my first investment. It was, it wasn't even a big investment share wise, but, for me, it's a decent chunk of change. And so I watched it and went up, and it went up over $8, and it dipped again, went up again, dipped again, went up again. So I just said, no, I'm just going to keep this cool. So then it gets up to 912, 915, 9.25, something like that. And I mean, for me, that would have been a decent profit. And I said, boy, maybe I should sell, maybe I should sell. And then I didn't, because, you know, what ends up happening is, you know, you start reading something on StockTwits or something like that, and you know, you get caught up in the moment. And so I held and held and held, and then it dropped and dropped and dropped. And so then, you know, you could tell it was a sell-off, you know, whether you would consider it a dump and pump or, you know, or a panic sell. For me, being inexperienced, it was definitely a little bit of a panic sell.
Gotcha. So obviously there's a lot of talk of feelings and what you should have done and all that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, hindsight is always 20/20. But did this kind of open your eyes to you need to have a more regimented criteria for entry and exit?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's still a learning process. And being an actor, you know, I live on my emotions a lot, so it's difficult. It's difficult for me to detach in some ways, and then in some ways I can look at things in a very rational way. But that was kind of it. It's like, man, you know, I because then it went up. You know, as soon as I sold, by the time it hit after hours, you know, for that day, it was back up again. And even though it was maybe only 20 cents a share, or whatever it was, that's more money in my pocket I could have had even if I had just waited. And then following it and seeing the patience, you know, and then it goes up to $10, and you know, it's back and forth and up and down. But the bottom line is, you know, if I had tried to stay a little bit more rational in that sense, in that, you know, episode, I definitely could have profited more, 100%.
So obviously I didn't really hear any discussion of your use of charts, technical analysis, or anything like that. So how did you kind of get involved in that? Or I'm assuming, being here on the podcast now, you still have some sort of interest in charts. So what turned you to that versus the more fundamental investment style kind of buy and hold that you were doing then?
Well, the biggest thing, and this is kind of a testament to Clay, I guess, is, you know, reading StockTwits and, you know, just kind of following with people, and, you know, the bullish and the bearish, and, you know, and it's very evident when people are mad and they're trying to get their money back and they're trying to get you to sell so they can buy, you know, or whatever the case may be. What turned me on to you guys, and you know, is, you know, I see Clay would pop in every now and again on different boards, and, you know, just kind of offer up a link or do something that, you know, one of his short videos, and just talking about these technical charts. So I started kind of looking at that, and it just makes more sense to me, I guess, from an analytical approach. It just seems like it's very definitive. You know, it's kind of funny the way that you know, the charts look in regards to the lines. You know, you have a line here and you have a line here, and this is the up or this is the down, and that's very straightforward in a way. So that kind of made me just look at it. And then the other thing is that there's so much, on StockTwits specifically, there's so much inflammatory talk about Clay and what he does, and he's the master manipulator, and he's the master shorter, and he's, you know, his converted legions are, you know, all brainwashed and this and that. So whenever anybody's getting dumped on that much, that means that there's something there that people don't care for because they don't know what's going on. So, you know, that kind of intrigued me too. Not gonna lie.
Well, let's not talk about that too much. I don't want my Somalian hedge fund or the North Korean hedge fund. We're trying to keep that under the wraps. Ches is currently starting up a hedge fund. What country are you starting your penny stock shorting hedge fund in, Ches? We're branching out. I can't remember that. We probably shouldn't talk about this so publicly, Ches.
Well, with all the crypto profits I have, I bought my own island and I'm incorporating. Excellent. So I can just make my own law.
Nice.
There you go. And for a little context here, what Aarron is referring to is I do video chart analysis, and I will post these online, and sometimes the price goes down afterwards just for natural causes, and people that they think that I have, some say it's a curse, literally, and I wish I was trying to be funny right now and make the hedge fund stuff, that was obviously a joke, but this part is not a joke. Some people blame it on a curse. Some people say that Ches and I, and, you know, just the whole community as a whole, is some penny stock shorting hedge fund, and these are just the signals out there that exist. Why we would need signals, why we wouldn't just send emails or text messages, I don't know. But I guess we need signals to publicly broadcast to everybody that, hey, this is the next one we're going to short, and the conspiracies go on and on. And again, I wish I was you know, to be funny right now, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, as we've discussed in past podcasts, it's basic human psychology. There's nothing groundbreaking about this. People don't like to admit they're wrong. You factor in that when being wrong in situations cause you to lose money, which is the case when you're in the stock market and just financial markets as a whole, then people really don't want to admit they're wrong. So they will look to any external cause necessary to blame, no matter how crazy it may be. So I'm glad. Now, you can be honest, Aarron. We're all friends here. Did you ever believe any of this, or were you just always intrigued by it?
Well, no, it was something. You know, the idea of short manipulation is something I think that's very misconstrued. I know you did an episode on that, and you explained how much someone has to do to make any kind of profit, and it's utter nonsense. You know, it's so much like betting against the dice in craps, except the odds are completely reversed. You know, in craps, when you play the dark side or against the dice, you actually usually have an edge, but it pays out so much less. But this is like playing the dark side of craps with no payout whatsoever. And it's very interesting to me. So I didn't know anything about that really. It's just that, you know, you read that and you see so many people, you know, just blaming, you know, everything under the sun. So it was just kind of interesting to me, you know. Like I said, it was kind of like your counterculture. That's kind of where I came in and was like, all right, this guy has something different to offer. So
yeah, that's interesting, and it's amazing. All the tinfoil hats, as we like to call them, they provide a good buffer because those are the people that I don't want to surround myself with. But the people I do want to surround myself with are people that have good heads on their shoulders. And as counterintuitive as it may seem, just not believing all the nonsense that you see out there automatically gives you a leg up on lots of other traders because there's plenty of people that believe in that stuff. So, I mean, just by default, not believing in something that you would think most people would say is common sense, that actually makes it where, yeah, those are the people that I want to surround myself with. And, hey, here it worked. Aarron saw all that. Aarron clearly has common sense. He has just a general... knowledge of, like, I don't know another way to put it, common sense. And here we are, you know, we are now in the same community as one another. And these are the people, like I said, that I want to be. Ches, could you imagine if, like, somehow people that wore the tinfoil hats, like, just started to pour into the community? Could you imagine the chat room in that situation?
You would have to start paying me overtime to deal with them all because it would just be a ban fest all over the place. And I'll stick to my guns. There are people, and Clay, you can weigh in on this too, that have said, you know, the chat room's kind of intimidating at first. Like, you guys all have your own little lingo sometimes and stuff like that. I'm telling you, and I'll say it again, like I always say it, this is the best community I've ever been in because it is not filled with people shilling and trying to pump up these crappy liquid stocks. It's literally just a nice, clean, well kind of, you know, moderated community where it's just technical alerts, and I will do everything in my power to keep this community as great as I can be. So yes, it's a very, very unique thing to see after, you know, I was in 4 or 5 chat rooms before I found you. So it's a rarity. And yes, those people with the tinfoil hats, if they want to learn how to take responsibility and trade responsibly, they're more than welcome to join, and we'd be happy to welcome them.
That is true. And if not, my one request would be for this community, we're supposed to be doing all this stuff. Could just one of you, please, just one of you, pay the $99, join, and then just take a couple screenshots where all this orchestrating is supposed to be taking place. You have my permission. You may take a screenshot of all this orchestrating, of all this that's supposedly happening in this community, and you may share it publicly. I just wish somebody would do that at one point in time, but all I ever see is accusations, and yet it would be pretty straightforward to find proof. Pay the $99, and there you go. Take as many screenshots as you want. But that's probably a little bit too commonsensical, huh, Aarron? When yeah.
Well, you know, again, I mean, you said it the best. Responsibility, taking responsibility. You know, willing to take a chance, and you know, I mean, that's a big thing. I think that's the emotion thing that I still have to deal with too. You know, I mean, everybody does in their day-to-day lives, but I think the emotion gets the best of people, especially when they make silly decisions. And then, you know, I could never do that. I could never try this. I could never go in this direction. So, you know, what can you do, man? Everybody has to make their own choices.
That is very true. So you see all this stuff on StockTwits, your gut instincts, your common sensibilities kick in. You're thinking, all right, this has caught my attention. where did you go from there? Did it take you, multiple weeks, multiple months to eventually join the community, or kind of what was your status in terms of going way back to Chez's question about where you learned about charts, how you started to get interested in charts? You first saw those videos. So what kind of unfolded from there that kept kind of the quote unquote chart ball rolling? If you will?
So once I got a little bit of a handle on all that and just, where people are at or what they're doing in regards to, their feelings for you or all that kind of stuff, I just visited the website, looked around, said, okay, all right, this is kind of interesting. I did some research, in regards to joining a forum. Yours wasn't the only one I looked at. The reviews were 50-50, and that's a very interesting thing, because it's the same thing with my industry. Working in internet marketing, search engine optimization, web development, social media management, AdWords, all that stuff. There's 50% of it that I can sell you and show you and be tangible with it, whether it's building you a nice website or, showing AdWord returns on a monthly basis, right? But then you get into some things, especially with people that are a little bit older. A lot of business owners today are still, 50 years old, 60 years old. A lot of people still don't have that crazy, computer savviness to them. So there's a lot of things that are not only, not 100% tangible where you can reach out and touch it, like seeing a new website. But then they also think that, a lot of things are supposed to be like a unicorn. They think you're robbing them because they haven't seen incredible results in a month, let alone, a year, when they had nothing, starting from nothing. So a lot of that comes in. My point with that in the 50-50 thing is, everybody has reviews, right? Everybody has bad reviews. It's been shown how the Better Business Bureau is effectively a scam when they give Harvard an F because Harvard didn't want to pay them. Wolfgang Puck got an F because Harvard didn't want to pay them. So the Better Business Bureau in Amherst, New York, and in the Buffalo area is actually, 10 minutes away from our office. So they came in, they took a tour, all this stuff. Magically, all of a sudden, we have a better rating. And so, what that really came down to was, perception is everything. And a lot of times, if you read reviews about my company and you read a lot of the negative reviews, we've been in business for almost 20 years. So inevitably, somebody's not going to be happy. But if you read a lot of the reviews and the negative reviews, it's I feel, I think, I thought, it wasn't this happened, or they didn't deliver this. A lot of the reviews that are negative are filled with emotion, personal feeling. So, the Buffalo Sabres, my hometown hockey team, they suck. They're terrible. They've been terrible for almost 2 decades now. All right, so that's a fact, but that's also my emotion. But I still love the team, so I'm going to support them one way or the other. You know what I mean? So that's a different kind of thing. There's a factual, the team has been poor for years, and my emotions are both, passionate and then also angry. But that's because I have that connection to it. When I'm reviewing something, I'm reviewing a restaurant that I go into, I don't review it based on how I felt. I base it on if the food was good, or if the food wasn't, or if the service sucked, or if the service was great. You follow what I'm saying there?
Yeah, and something I always bring up to my wife when she points out, oh, this place has bad reviews, I go, you have to remember this. People are much more likely to write a review or post something that is negative than they ever will when something is positive. And I personally have noticed that because, I look up what the website's rated as, is how we do as customer support and stuff like that. And I actually now, for the majority of stuff, when I have a great experience, I have a good experience, I will actually take the time to write that because if you're pissed off, if your service is bad or something, it's not hard to pop your phone open, go on Yelp and say, yeah, this place sucks, 0 stars. But somebody could have had, the greatest meal of their lives at the table next to you. They won't write anything. They might tell a friend, which is good. So I always kind of find that the review stuff interesting. So you find the website though, you find mixed reviews on it. What makes you kind of look deeper into it? Obviously you have kind of a knowledge about, how reviews work and stuff, especially with your company. But, what are you going to take your approach? Are you going to kind of dip your toe in the water? water? Are you going full bore?
No,
university
I did
package?
the $99 for the year. I'm still kind of I haven't had as much time to commit to it as I would have preferred to for a while, just with work being what it is and doing other things in my personal life. But that was kind of it. So, you know, like I said, I came to the website, checked out a couple other places, read these reviews, wasn't impressed with the reviews, and not with you guys, wasn't impressed with the reviews and what was being said. So I wasn't impressed with the reviews, and not that I wasn't impressed with the reviews, meaning with you guys and your service. The reviews didn't impress me with what they were saying. So what I found is that, you know, kind of just poking around and doing things, also, again, most of this at my day job, I found myself just coming back to your website. You know, I found myself coming back there 2 or 3 times. I found myself, you know, I felt, I appreciated your honesty, even just in kind of your intro videos and just like, hey, check this out or this or that. You know, you were able to, you know, you're able to access a little bit of content without even, you know, with no obligation whatsoever. Your website looks good. It's structural, you know, structurally sound, which is a big thing that a lot of people don't realize in my industry, but that's a major part of my job. So having a good functional website, it, you know, it displays professionalism. So all of those kinds of things, but more than anything, like I said, I found myself coming back to your website 3, 4, 5 times, and I said, all right, it's $100 for the year. Let's just see what's going on. So.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm sure IT Nate, the producer and the person that built the website, will be happy to hear that. So thank you for that feedback. It's just be a little careful. We don't need his ego getting too big on things. But good job, Nate. Well done with the website, because we're talking with somebody. You mentioned your company being 20 years old. Did you start the company, or you're just saying this is the company you work for that has been around for 20 years?
No, I'm just a long-suffering employee. I've been there for 6 years, but it's a local company to my area. Same family that founded it still runs the day-to-day operations. So
okay, all right, I do remember that now, because you want to get out freedom of time, but I couldn't remember if this was something that you started, and because you started, it was sucking up too much time. But all right, we're on the same page now. So I guess when did you, timeline-wise, when did you join?
I joined, I want to say, maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that.
Okay, all right. So you've been around a while, and as you already mentioned, you haven't been able to put as much time into things as what you do or what you want to, and that's totally fine. But I just, real quick, I got to take a swipe at some of the trolls out there. Clay, all you ever do is interview Clay Trader University people. You say it's for the community, but no, here's Aarron. He is not Clay Trader University. He is just Inner Circle, and Ches and I are more than happy to talk with him. So to those of you, once again, I think you're making comments based out of your emotion, like Aarron very nicely described, because we have, do the majority, are they Clay Trader University? Yes, but it's not like this is just exclusive to that. We've done many, and we have a couple coming up with more people that are not Clay Trader University. But, so sorry, Aarron, I didn't mean to, but sometimes the people, it's just like, what do you do? Listen to 3, and then statistically speaking, a sample size of 3 is not very good. You know, troll A or troll B, but there we go. Another data point that kind of dispels that. But anyways, I mean, so what is your kind of plan going forward? Obviously, it's limited with your time, but are you looking to, are you trading right now actively? Are you just so busy that you don't have time to trade? I guess, what does your current trading look like would probably be the best question to ask here.
So, you know, so I've got, I'm active on 3 stocks as we speak. I have 3 positions. I'm in a NAC, you know, NAK, with the Pebble Mine, which that's been almost since I really kind of got into everything. I've just gotten into XXII, which is actually a local company to Western New York in Clarence. And I'm also in DPW, and a friend of mine at work and I are going back and forth on that every day, because we're hoping that the news that comes out supposedly next week will be big. We've seen those ups and downs and ups and downs. That's actually that one. My entry point was pretty good when I got into that a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And of course it spiked, you know, over $5. And I was talking with my friend. I'm like, man, we might want to consider taking our profits. And we didn't. And of course it dipped down and it's made its way back in an incredible way. But again, even just with my self-taught discipline and saying this is what I need to start doing more of, you still hold on and just kind of that hope, and then that you want to talk about a panic sell, because everything people were saying, oh, partnership with Amazon and this, that, and the other, and then it didn't come through, and then you watch it just drop like the Titanic, and then you watch it kind of resurface and play around, and then it's making its way back up. So those are my 3 positions at the moment.
Can I offer you some advice?
Sure.
Okay, so DPW, that thing's been a monster. I can confirm it spiked, and in hindsight, you're saying, "Oh, I should have taken my profit," right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So my advice to you would be next time, remember, taking profit doesn't mean you have to sell your entire position.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah. you could have sold half of your shares, a quarter of your shares. So maybe next time, just from very fundamental, very basic trade management habits, just remember, don't fall. And I'm speaking to myself here. When I first got started, I thought take profits, sell meant, oh, that means you sell everything, or you have to sell everything. I mean, if you have 100 shares, there's no rule that says you have to sell 100 shares. You can sell 10 shares if you want. So the next DPW, that would be kind of from the outsider looking in, just something that I would say to consider, going forward that way. If it does dip back down, well, hey, at least you still sold some towards the top, or if it keeps on going, at least you still have shares and didn't sell them all. So, I mean, that's always a quick little way to manage a trade and kind of hedge your risk, but also keep yourself involved at the same time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And you know what? I was totally validated on this one because, when your average price, is somewhere in the low 3s, it spikes to, 501. And then, and then it dips down to under 3, or, goes back to that 3 or 310 mark. And I keep telling them, like, man, we could have done it. We could have gotten right back in. So, absolutely, whether it's a single position or, a solitary position, multiple shares, whatever it is, that's kind of it too. I've come to learn that, when I feel, and again, like I'm not trading with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So for me, when I look at it and I go, wow, that's a car payment. Wow, that's a rent payment. Wow, that's a better Christmas for everybody involved. And I get that little bit of an itch in the thumb to sell. That I'm trying to get more and more and more to be okay with that too. Because one of the best things I've heard just from other people is never be afraid to, don't be ashamed of profits. Even if somebody else makes more an hour later, you made $500. You made $500. You can't ever argue with that.
So what exactly do you use to determine kind of getting involved in any of these 3 stocks that you have? Is it just some kind of news release, or you know a little bit about it? What's the criteria for that?
with DPW, as I said, my friend, and also XXII, we were both kind of talking about things, and we kind of came to this realization that, oh, hey, we have a mutual interest. And so he was giving me, he's done a lot of research. He's been in XXII for a long time, actually. He's been in that for quite a bit. And he was getting really, really excited about it and explaining to me why and showing me why. So, I'm a good listener. So I don't ever have a problem with, taking advice from people. With DPW, he was explaining to me about, their potential, with the cryptocurrencies. That's something that I've started to take an interest in myself. So again, so my pattern is it's something that kind of interests me. It's something that gets validated by somebody else's opinion that I respect. And so we go along with that. With NAC I've been long in for, like I said, I've been trading for a little over a year, somewhere around there, year and a half. So I've been in that since almost the beginning for myself. And that one I read about more than anything else, reading about, Pebble and reading about, the EPA and having to go through all these steps. And, people were expecting it to blow up at $5 or $8 a share or $20 a share. And, it's kind of holding steady after a lot of ebb and flow. So that one, I would say more than any other stock that I've participated in any capacity, that was the one that I did the most research on, and that's definitely the one I have the most time vested in too. Okay,
so is it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it safe to say that charts aren't making a whole lot of into your decision-making process? It sounds it's more like just fundamental type research, and then like you said, you do your research, and then you get verification from somebody else that, hey, yeah, that makes sense? Or are charts factoring into all this analysis in, kind of as some sort of maybe confirmation sign? Or are you just pretty much going right now based on what you know, what you're reading, and then, confirmation via not necessarily a chart, but, your buddy, for example?
Yeah. So for the three that I'm in now, the validation has come kind of from other sources. Again, like I've said a couple times, stock investment, this whole concept is definitely something that is, a little bit anathema to me in regards to my way of thinking, or, things that are comfortable for me. So, learning something like the technical analysis, I won't lie, it's a little bit difficult for me to grasp all the concepts. And that's a good thing, because, you always have to keep learning. But that's kind of the point, is that I see the potential in that. And again, because, I'm an emotional person, and, I've made decisions in the market as well as in my personal life, of course, based too much on my decisions. So my thought process is, when you wipe the emotion out of things, you're able to just look at it with a much better view. So whether that's with your job, with your life, with stocks, not to take emotion out of things, but I think that when you're dealing with your potential, you're dealing with your life, you're dealing with analytical decisions, emotions get in the way too much. So I think the technical, the charts and that idea of analysis, as I begin to grasp it more, it makes more sense with how I believe I should be proceeding, with this kind of investment and with this kind of opportunity.
Well, I am absolutely glad to hear that, because I am a all information based. Feelings and everything and emotions always get me into trouble and generally end up to losing money. So I'm glad to see you're finally starting to notice that as well in your own life. But so what would you say are some strengths you have currently in your trading?
So I would say that, my strengths are that, I'm not afraid. I'm not playing with money that I can't lose. If for some reason the market bottoms out, or something crazy happens where, something went from, 0 to hero and then all the way back again, I'm not, I'd be mad, I'd be pissed, I'd be upset about it for sure. Who wouldn't be? But I wouldn't be, putting myself out. I wouldn't, not be able to pay my bills. I wouldn't still have some savings, things like that. So I'm not playing scared in that regard. Tying into that is that I've learned more and more to, the panic idea, trying not to, I'm learning more and more to let the waves ride a little bit. Be willing to take that little bit more of a venture, because it tends to seem like it pays off. So those are my, that's what I would say right now. The willingness to kind of ride it out and go for it.
Well, I like to hear that, you're not going to put yourself and your family in a cardboard box. That's good, and that's awesome. And, your ability to want to take risk is good, because people who are too risk adverse generally don't do so well. There's a lot of different methods and ways to be in the market, but that's good to hear. Now, what about weaknesses? What are some things you want to work on going forward?
So my weaknesses, again, I do still have some emotion behind things, which is human nature. More than anything, the weakness right now, and this is where, the idea of the technical analysis comes into play, and hopefully will be able to be more so for me as I go along. I think that there's something to be said for, making a play, whether it's a buy, a sell, or anything in between, on your emotion or how you feel. I alluded to that, where I'm like, if I get that itch and I look at it and it's a good profit for me to take, I need to do that, right? That's being in the moment. That's, a lot, a luck is made. And so, if you're willing to jump on it, I think you're going to be more successful. But, emotions can still play a part. The big thing for me with the technical analysis is that I feel I'm not 100% educated as I should be. And, that doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing if you take a leap of faith because you see something that you like. But I think the whole point of Clay's system and the idea of technical analysis, apart from taking the emotion out of it, is just making better decisions in general. So that's where I'm at. It's still that learning process to say, yes, this is a good reason to do this because of A, B, and C, as opposed to say, well, what the heck, let's see what happens with A.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying there. And kind of to piggyback on some of this, but you mentioned, you have your most time into, I think, your most time in NAK or XXI?
NAK, yeah.
Okay, so you have a lot of time into that. So kind of a two-pronged question. What does your routine look like in terms of, I know you're busy at work, so are you doing your research in the morning? Are you doing it at night? And then how much time would you say is actually going into these routines in order for you to arrive at the decision of, yeah, I'm going to click the buy button?
Yeah, so, I'll spend a little time on the weekends. I'll spend a little bit of time. A lot of time I actually find after hours, just kind of watching things as the after hours market goes. And then just kind of looking at that, looking at trends, things like that. I do a lot of research at work. I put that up on the second screen and go for it. And that's a consistent trend too. With NAK, honestly, Clay, it doesn't answer your question in the best way, but that one, learning patience, like I've been kind of trying to say, that one right now is kind of a just check it here or there and put it in the drawer, because so many people have said so many things about it, positive, negative, and everywhere in between. And it's just very evident that, like on that one, it's still, it's still the waiting game. It looks very positive, looks hopeful and helpful, but that's definitely the waiting game. So, in some respects with that, it's just kind of saying, all right, just keep an eye on it to make sure that nothing's going on and set an alert and do whatever. But, that's the pot of water that's going to take a long time to boil.
I hear you. But so I know the obvious reason why you did come onto this podcast was to borrow my time machine. Now, if I was to lend it to you and you could go back to any time period you want and not give yourself a buy or sell recommendation, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
It would be to don't chase either way. And that's another personal story for me. I was involved with Delcath Systems, DCTH, before it got delisted. Kind of stumbled across that one. Super low entry point, just pennies. So I did some of the looking that my friend had showed me, while I was learning with Snapchat, and looked at the ups and downs, and looked at the time invested, looked at the company, looked at, the very, very, very bullish trend that many people were kind of putting up for it. So I said, this is a nominal cost. What the heck? And then it went up, made a little bit of money, went up a little more, made a little bit of money, went back down, bought on the dip, kept my average very, very low. Then what happened with that one, same kind of thing that happened with DPW, would have made an incredible profit for my investment, held on to it because I was listening to other people instead of just doing the right thing. So then it drops, still have faith in it, goes all the way back up again, make a great profit on it. Then as it starts swinging down again, this is where the research comes in that I need to do more of, because I wasn't as educated as I should have been. And so basically every dollar I made, I ended up having to take a loss before I lost even more, and then it ultimately got delisted. So that's where we would go. We would go a couple months back to that for sure.
Well, we'll look at the glass as half full. At least you aren't still holding through the delisting and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
So salvaging some of the position is better than not salvaging at all. But yeah, those voices, they'll make you hold and hold and hold. And, when you don't quite have the right management process in place, all of a sudden, like you just described, before you know it, all your gains have not only disappeared, but now you're looking at a loss. So, I mean, definitely those are where you got to learn from. And we all have slaps across the face. That's just kind of a rite of passage. And it's just a matter of what are you going to do with that slap across the face? You're going to keep on doing the same thing, treat things with the same strategy, or you're going to try to change things, evolve, and then adapt so all decisions and such are being made in logical manner. So that's good stuff, and that's so listeners, it happens to everybody. It's how you react and adapt from them that's going to determine long-term success, or just kind of wallowing around and flapping your arms, kind of like running around with your chicken with your head cut off, or running around like a chicken with its head cut off. So now we move into the serious stuff here. And this is very serious stuff, especially this first question, because this is straight up in your industry. So I am very curious to know about this, but we'll have some fun questions here as we end the party. But what is your favorite movie?
Heat by Michael Mann.
Heat. Is that the one with what's his name? Pacino,
Yeah,
Al Pacino,
Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Danny Trejo. List goes on and on and on and on and on. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I thought so. I'll have to see. Have you seen that one, Chaz?
I know I have, but I haven't seen it in easily over a decade. So I know I watched it when I was younger, though. But what about your favorite meal and dessert?
Buffalo, so anything greasy will work. A big chicken guy in any capacity, but I have to be honest. I love pizza, man. I love pizza and chicken fingers and stuff like that. Favorite dessert? I'm a sugar freak too. So Sour Patch Kids, ice cream. Just fruit, strawberries, stuff like that. That's a loaded question for me because I just if you put it in front of me, as long as it doesn't have peppers, it's pretty much guaranteed that I'll make your mother happy because you don't want to eat her cooking anymore, and I'll eat everything in the house. That's pretty.
When I hear Sour Patch Kids, that's just hook, line, and sinker for me. That's yeah. You can't go wrong with Sour Patch Kids. So I'm there. We haven't asked this question for a while, so I'm going to pull this one up. But if you could travel someplace in the world, any place, where would you like to travel someday?
My big trip. So that's a cool question to ask because I haven't seen like a ton of. I've been to Europe a couple times when I was a lot younger, but I haven't done much in regards to traveling across the United States or anything like that. So I've started doing that a little bit more over the past couple of years. My ultimate goal within the next few years is to travel to England. I'm a huge soccer fan, football. If you do the proper term, and I follow the English league pretty religiously. My team is the Hull City Tigers, who are in the second division now. I don't know if you know about how that works over there, but you can get knocked down in the leagues. They're this club that is just in turmoil and it's a mess. And the reason that I found them, I had been out of watching soccer for a while, and I decided about 10 or 12 years ago, I'm like, I got to get back into it. So I started reading this article on ESPN about the Tigers, and everything about this team and everything about the city and the area that they're in, it just parallels Buffalo. You got this steel town that got bombed out in World War II, never recovered. Well, we're in the Rust Belt, never really recovered from the 80s. It's finally coming back, but all these kinds of things. Is the biggest soccer club in England that had never been promoted to the top league, where Manchester United and Arsenal and all that stuff is. And I said, boy, the Buffalo Bills lost 4 Super Bowls and we lost the Stanley Cup because of a foot. So all these things kind of come into play. I like the colors, I like all this stuff, but the story was amazing. A local boy scored the goal that put them into that position. So I realized that this like a sister city to Buffalo. And, the thing about it is that, you support your team no matter how awful they are. You support your team no matter where they are. So that's kind of the thing. I got the roommate into it as well. He kind of scoffed at me, and then next thing you know, he's screaming at the TV more than I am. So that's the goal in the next couple of years, to go to England, go for a couple weeks, taking rugby, go to Ireland, watch some Irish stuff, go up to Scotland. But I want to follow my team for a couple weeks and just go around and just go up and down England and cause some trouble.
It's actually refreshing to hear because my brother is the same way. He's in a position where he's able to kind of travel and go to those games. And it's nice to see some, U.S. interest in soccer, football, whatever you guys want to call it, because considering it's like the world's largest sport, it's funny how much it's not very popular here, even though some people have different interests in it. It is what it is. But it's cool to hear. It's nice to see some other people have interest in it. But what would you say are 3 words that define successful trading?
Patience, persistence, and intellect.
Nice. Patience, persistence, and intellect. Very, very nice. And that's a great way to wrap it up. And I just to echo Ches real quick, I do agree. Kind of weird how that works out. Biggest sport in the world, and not that popular here. Although I will echo your kind of buddy. I don't know why, but World Cup comes around, and the U.S. didn't even make it this year. But yeah, that's the one time it can be intense. I will say that I've watched. That's the one time I've watched soccer, and I am probably yelling at the TV. But it's definitely a good time. So, Aarron, as we wrap things up here, again, Thank you on two notes. The first note, thank you for just taking time out of your evening to spend some time with us. And then second, thank you once again for voluntarily coming on here and sharing your story. And we'll have to definitely have you back at a later time, as we like to bring back guests just to kind of hear how things continue to develop. You're clearly early on in your journey, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of pathways you continue to take, and then what sort of progress you make. So, would you be willing to come back at some point in the future?
Absolutely. You let me know when, and I'll be here. Happy to do it, man.
I like that attitude. That makes your life much easier. So, thank you again, Aarron. Thank you again, Ches. And for you listeners out there, a final few things before we go. If you're listening on the podcast player, make sure to subscribe on iTunes. If you could do this goes a long way. I mean, we talked about reviews and all that on today's podcast, but leaving us a rating on iTunes goes a long way, really helps us out, continues to help spread the podcast around, so we would really appreciate that. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel, but also check out the channel as a whole. Lots of other videos out there other than just these podcasts. And then finally, if you're listening on claytrader.com, then hit that share button and leave us comments down below. We will read those and we will reply to them.
This has been the Stock Trading Reality Podcast. Thanks for taking the time to hang out. To learn more about Clay and the Clay Trader community, including the trading team, premium training, and more, visit claytrader.com.